According to some sources that I've found, there was only one actual review of the Ghost Pop tape by Devon Hendryx when the album came out in 2013. And that apparently has been erased. So I guess I'm not alone in missing the boat on this project when it came out 11 years ago. I'm not sure it's as excusable that I didn't review it when it was re-released last year, so why am I releasing it now? And gee willikers, why is my ear so red? Are any of you doctors, can you tell me? Like, why did my ear get so red? Doesn't matter. So why am I reviewing this now? You know, I should have reviewed it last year when it came back out. Well, there's a couple of good reasons. One, I have a top tier of Patreon where I will do an album that is requested. And Leon said, please review this album. So if you are happy that you see this, and on Instagram I said, hey, should I release this to a wider public? And I got like 300 votes and 299 people said, yes, release that on YouTube. One person did not want this on YouTube. So you should all say, thank you, Leon, and boo, mystery downvoter. But that's just one reason. The other reason is I'm going to be going on vacation. Not really vacation. My wife is wicked pregnant. So at any time, I'm going to be rushing off to the hospital. And it's going to be a long time, so I don't want to leave you without some dope videos to sleep to. So that's what this is. I'm just going to sort of give you this because it's good, it's interesting, and because, you know, a lot of you really want me to talk about it. So why? You know, what's the reason? Why do we care about this random project by an artist who doesn't exist anymore? Because this is, of course, JPEG Mafia before JPEG Mafia became JPEG Mafia, the final album while he was still called Devon Hendryx, before he moved to Baltimore and became JPEG Mafia. So if you love JPEG Mafia like I do, hell, I basically invented this goofy thing just to explain his beats and his amazing vision. You know, you need to listen to this old stuff to hear Jamargret before Jamargret, right? And so, you know, what is it? It's like, it's not even really hip-hop. It's sort of hip-hop. It's sort of rap. It's sort of experimental. It's kind of avant-garde. It's vaguely political. Sometimes it's explicitly political. It's a hard album to unpack. It's a very enjoyable album to unpack. But let's just start with just the man. Just the name Barrington Devon Hendryx. Barrington? Now, I don't know. But is he named after Barrington Levy? I know his parents are Jamaican, so maybe Barrington is just a common name in Jamaica. If you don't know Barrington Levy, he is a delightful reggae singer. You probably know him best for, skiddly wop, skiddly whoa, sing. I saw him once perform in Santa Barbara. It was a great show. And then Devon, which is spelled D-E, and then capital V-A-U-G-H-N. Now what's interesting is he spells it D-E-V-O-N, like Devon. And what's interesting is how much this early project, which I'll get to all the different versions that exist, but it was originally released on Bandcamp, the avatar that he used was just this sort of like generic looking white guy. So you can sort of imagine a generic looking white guy with a name like Devon, right? That makes sense. Not so much Devon. So he's sort of putting his name, he's recoding one of his names to make it, I think, more white-coded. That's at least the way that I hear it. Which makes sense because I think this project is trying to exist partly sort of outside of those kinds of constraints. Then we have Hendricks. Now the way his name is actually spelled is I-C-K-S. He spelled it R-Y-X. And I just want to take a second here. You know, nominative determinism is something which I am interested in. It's the idea that, like, what your name is determines who you are. Obviously, somebody whose name is Sky Payne would be fascinated by this idea. There's land is even in my middle name. That's how wild it is. It's like I have this whole concept of, like, the highs and lows of existence are built into my name. Right? Like, that's just how I feel. So, what does it mean to be a black genius named Hendricks? Now, listen, a lot of you guys are super excited about JPEG Mafia, and I certainly understand. But when I was your age, I didn't have JPEG Mafia. I had Jimi Hendrix. Of course, Jimi Hendrix only had 3 proper albums. So I bought those on CD, of course. And then there was the live album with Band of Gypsies, where he started to get more militant. Who knows what he would have done in the 70s. And then I just went cuckoo. And I would just buy the live box sets, live at the Forum. We're talking... I bought his greatest hits because they had 2 songs on there, and I was such a Jimi Hendrix hipster. I used to say, 51st Anniversary is probably Jimi Hendrix's best song. You know what that's like? I just covered his most recent song, and I was saying that it's maybe too avant-garde, and a lot of you said actually it's not that avant-garde compared to most of his other stuff. It's like, I know it's fun being a super fan, it's fun knowing all these things and being super into it. But if you hear that track and you're not just like, whoa, absolutely super duper totally crazy, Sin Miedo, if you hear that song and don't say that's at the edges of listenability, you're just fronting, just like I was fronting when I said 51st Anniversary is Jimi Hendrix's best song. It's not. Talking the posthumous albums, the weird live albums. So I got super duper duper into it. Like the way that you at home sit around and re-listen to Veteran or Cornballs over and over again and obsess over his lyrics and his life. That's what I was. I read biographies and the whole life of Jimi Hendrix just over and over and over again, and documentaries and anything I could get my hands on. I was totally fascinated. And obviously it's fascinating because they're both genre and generational defining black geniuses who grew up not exactly in the center of the world, I mean, Seattle, that's not exactly where rock and roll's from. Jimi Hendrix's dad was Canadian, or was born in Vancouver at least. And then they both go into the military. Jimi Hendrix was a Screaming Eagle. JPEG was in the Air Force. It's fascinating, right, that these 2 huge black American figures of the counterculture and psychedelia and bending everything also ended up being employed by the U.S. government and given guns. It's a pretty fascinating thing. So I don't know. I don't know if that's on purpose or not on, of course it's not on purpose because that's his actual name. But maybe shedding the name was getting sort of out from underneath that kind of shadow, or I don't know what. I mean, he was 24 when this came out. Maybe he didn't want to be Hendrix when he turned 27. I will just say I find that to be a pretty fascinating concept, that they both ended up in the military. Because it's not like there's a lot of white rock stars who were in the military before. It's not like, I don't know, John Fogerty was in the Screaming Eagles. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so let's get back to this project. So this is, as far as I can tell... Now listen, one of you said on Instagram, look on YouTube, there's no good videos about the Ghost Pop Tape. I did a little bit of research. That's not entirely true. As true as my ear is red, what seriously is going on there? This is never... It doesn't happen to me. I look like my friend Mark. He used to, whenever he'd get nervous, his ears would just go, "Wah." Sorry, Mark, if you're out there watching. Anyways, this is the apex, okay, yes, the videos. Sorry, I got lost. It's late here in the afternoon. So there is, Jesus Christ, we beat Medicare. What's going on with me? You need to replace me with Kamala. There is at least one very good video on this album by 108 Mics. So if you haven't seen it, it's pretty good. That helped me out through here. Helped me sort of figure things out with this very complicated project. And in essence, what I've learned in my limited research is that this is the apex of Devon Hendryx. This is the last thrall, the last hurrah before he would shed that and move to Baltimore, of all places. Who moves to Baltimore to make it as a music star? I know he's famous for being weird, but that's the weirdest thing you can possibly do. And this is this ghost pop tape, and it's made in Japan because he was stationed in Japan and he had served in Iraq. and it's just this very American story and this very internal feeling. You look up the genres, okay? On Bandcamp, you look up the genres, and what's fascinating is, when you go into it, he is an artist now who has all this power, all this fame, all this influence, but the Bandcamp for this album is like this reminder that he was just another nobody, just a dude in the military who was making music in his bedroom, presumably a pretty small apartment if he's living in Japan, and just trying to do anything, trying to get out of this space. And so these are the genres that are listed in Bandcamp. Ambient. Okay, it's a little bit more form than ambient, but that sets your expectations. It's not filled with bangers. Electronic. Okay. Experimental. Okay. Generation Y. Oh. Emphasizing the millennialness of this. Hip-hop, rap. Okay, so that's like the fifth description. Indie, lo-fi, alternative, avant-garde. Bedroom. Makes sense. It's a very bedroom album. Experimental, ghost pop, psychedelic, Japan. Psychedelic, I hear. Experimental is in there twice. He told you twice so that you know how experimental it is. And then ghost pop. That, as far as I can tell, that's like not a genre. I mean, maybe it's a genre, but is it? Like, what does it mean? What? I mean, I looked it up on Urban Dictionary or something, and it says it's like when you're skateboarding and you do an ollie, but your tail doesn't touch the ground. I did the opposite, where I would do ollies and the wheels wouldn't leave the ground. So I was a really good skater. I used to rock Ray Barbie decks exclusively. That was the kind of skater I was. So it's a very confusing mixture of genres, because ghost pop itself, to me, doesn't say anything. It just sort of indicates something kind of poppy but otherworldly and experimental and ambient. And that's the space that he's putting us in. Like we have all these different spaces to be, just with that word cloud from SoundCloud of what this album is going to sound like. And I really want to emphasize bedroom. I think that's a super important room in here. And we look at the paratext, the things around the album itself. We have the cover, which is a naked torso with a covered head. Okay. So we know he's a veteran. We know he was in Iraq. Whether or not he was in Abu Ghraib, we'd probably know if he were. If he was. Abu Ghraib really marked our consciousness. And if you're a young person, Abu Ghraib was a place where the American government tortured prisoners and photographed them and humiliated them. It was a bad look for America. And I don't know. Is that the purpose of this? Is this supposed to be an Abu Ghraib image? And then there's a little thing underneath with a picture of a Batman Pez and a Joker toy from the movie The Dark Knight. Now, you might just be there. You might just be a nerd. You might just say, cool, Batman. Jesus. Batman. Maybe. I'll get more into Batman lore, but let's not forget Dark Knight, okay? Dark Knight, very famous movie. Everyone loves Dark Knight. But it's also a very deeply right-wing movie. It is a deeply Republican movie. It is a way that America can process 9/11 and what we did in the name of 9/11. It was a way for us to process torture. The same way that we had torture movies like Saw and Hostel, although Hostel is really underrated. That's an amazing movie that's actually about tourism. It's not about torture, but we'll get into that later. I mean, not today, on my second channel someday. But we had the TV show 24, we had this whole kind of apparatus, but really I think Dark Knight, because it was such a popular movie, was a way for us to just work through what is America and what is terrorism. And that's why Batman was America and the Joker was terrorism. And it was right there, it was right on the nose. It even ended with the stupidest plot point in any Batman movie ever, and I'm including every single line of dialogue from Arnold Schwarzenegger in Batman and Robin. There's nothing in that movie as stupid as his, I can see everywhere little cameras all over the place, but that was obviously about the Patriot Act, and that's the purpose of The Dark Knight. is that helped us as a country to mediate what happened to us and what we did. So having Abu Ghraib with Batman and Joker makes a lot of sense, because the famous interrogation scene between Batman and the Joker, you don't hit me in, you don't start with the head, that whole thing. By the way, not for nothing, Heath Ledger, the entire movie, he's just doing a Richard Dreyfuss impersonation. There. I ruined The Dark Knight for you. That whole scene, I think, is supposed to be representative of torture and Abu Ghraib, so I think that's all kind of there. Sort of beyond that, this is actually contemporary to this, was maybe a little bit earlier. If you never read Grant Morrison's run on Batman, he does a lot of great stuff. In particular, this Batman R.I.P. And listen, we know that Devon Hendryx is a rather nerdy guy, so it wouldn't surprise me if he was not aware of this run of Batman that has all this great stuff with Batman and Joker, and he's playing cards, and it's red and it's black, and it's this whole series of back and forth where Batman is trying to get to the bottom, trying to get to the truth of what the Joker is saying. What are the little breadcrumbs that he's leaving? What's the truth? Tell me the truth. I need to decipher it. And the truth is, he's just goofing. There's no structure. Grant Morrison understood the best thing about Batman and Joker isn't that Batman is reason and that Joker is chaos. It's that Batman's reason is just bullshit. It just doesn't hold up. It's like any other human effort to impose order and clarity on a chaotic universe. It just doesn't work. So anyways, how does that fit into the album? Well, I think it fits into the album pretty well. I think that's a lot of the theme of the album. Now, as far as the other bit of paratext goes, there's a movie. He made a movie. He made a little DVD to go along with this album, which apparently was never released. Well, it was released. Actually, on a website that's a video website that's more popular than the one you're watching right now. What's more popular than YouTube? X videos. That's more popular than YouTube because it's pornography. Am I going to do that thing where I say corn? I just said it. I'm becoming a real YouTuber. Buy my merch. Have you thought about getting a VPN? Don't. And if you haven't seen the Ghost Pop tape video, I'm not sure you should. It's pretty disturbing, but it matches perfectly with this album. It goes perfectly because it's filled with pornography. God damn me. I am so lame. I'm doing it. Straight and gay. Interracial, bondage, humiliation, foot stuff, super censored Japanese stuff, and then mixed in with all that is some like pictures of wrestling rings and like vapor wavy VHS distortion and scanning pages and women stripping. It is a very unsettling, very well made, because all the images are kind of blurred out. And then it cuts in anime, like this dude was I feel like so much of the internet just is what he was 11 years ago. The last Patreon video I did was actually an anime music video creator. Prostrate Constantly. So that's what it's called, right? Prostrate Constantly. Was it Prostate Constantly? It was one of those two things. It's good. I'll include a link to it down below. But what's wild is how much this video just is the album. Now, what is that? Well, I'm not there yet. I'll get to the themes soon. Let's just talk a little bit more about, let's talk at all about the music, because we're 20 minutes in here. I haven't talked about the music. Now, the first time I listened to it, I was like, yeah, I don't know. It's not my thing. Someone mentioned that Fantano only did a 1-minute review of this, which, I would like to give him credit for being a man of honor, because like Fantano talking about JPEG Mafia, like that's like his rent for a month. So I don't understand how he didn't do a full video on it. But hey, I guess he gets clicks other ways, or I don't know what. So props to him. I didn't like his take. I thought he undersold the project, but still. But it's not just a massage parlor. I realize what it is. It's an underwater level of a video game. That's what I think is the inspiration of this. Now, I found a website called GameScore Fanfare that describes a little bit of the history of underwater music. Underwater music. So what happens is, and this started like with Koji Kondo and Super Mario Brothers, the first one, like when you're underwater, you move slower and the game mechanics are intentionally clunky, which is why water levels almost always suck. And so there's like a whole lexicon of underwater sounds. And initially it was just waltzes because of Koji Kondo and Super Mario Brothers. But then Donkey Kong Country comes out and David Wise comes out with the song Aquatic Ambience. And that's a song which is like, if you know about video game music, that's just bam. If I just say underwater music in video, people will just say Donkey Kong, just right off the bat. And that's what this whole album feels like. Because, Donkey Kong Country, there's like no beat, really. It's just bubbly and unsettling and tinkly sounds and filters and delays. And it's so sparse. It was so revolutionary in video game music that then a couple of years later, for Super Mario 64, comes out, and Koji Kondo makes Dire Dire Docks, a different music level for Mario, and where he was the innovator before, now he's basically copying David Wise with more sparse, mostly percussionless. That's the mode that we're in, but we're in a bedroom, okay? So just picture your, I spent a summer in Japan, in the part of Kichijoji. Very hot. The hottest place I've ever been. Hottest place on planet Earth is Tokyo in the summer. Okay? Also, air conditioning was too expensive, so we didn't have an air conditioner. And the people I was staying with didn't want us to use the fan because electricity was too hot. Yeah. My poor daughter had a heat stroke. It's great. It's great. Great. It's great. Okay, so that's like, and the space is so small. So like just picture a totally neon outside. Many streets or most streets are lit up by neon lights. Everything's just neon. Everything's packed in. And then just imagine a sort of lonely man sitting in an apartment, except it is floor to ceiling with water. But then what are the themes of this album? This album came out the same year I got divorced. And I got to tell you, I could have used this album. Now, fortunately, I had the holy trinity of 2013 albums to get me through. Jesus, Random Access Memories, and Bankrupt by Phoenix. Those three albums pulled me through. They had all the right emotions. But this album really does a great job. I'm not going to say incel, because I don't think it's incel, because I think it predates the internet. It's just a certain kind of young male sexual desperation and depravity. It's like self-doubt and depression, but it's for people who are just really indoors, people who are like me, indoorsmen. People, Woody Allen, speaking of sketchy, sexy dudes, sketchy dudes about sex, he famously said, I am at two with nature. So if you are at two with nature, you're inside and you're underwater and you're here and you're depressed. It reminds me of my friend Lee. I used to work with Lee, who actually makes ambient music now too. He makes good music. He described something to me. We used to work together. We worked at a PR firm right as we got out of college, right when we were this age, 23, 24. And I said, what do you do after work? And he's like, well, I got to get some face pillow time. I was like, what does that mean? Well, I just go home and I sit on my bed and then I just fall forward. And I just have my face in the pillow. Now listen, I'm not going to old man you, but get ready for some old manning. That's what we used to do before the internet. Before doom scrolling, before Reddit, before Discord, you just face pillowed. 'Cause life sucks. You know, when you're a young man and you feel like your life is going nowhere and you don't have anyone in your life, and you don't know where you're going and you don't really like where you've been and you hate where you are, you just got a face pillow. But that was back in 2000. This is 14 years later. You can't just put on Amnesiac by Radiohead and face pillow. You got to be on the internet. And that's what I think makes this whole album just so damn horny. It is the darkest. It's way more horny than it is depressed. It's also depressed, but it's way more horny. And what it reminds me of is, like, it taps into a certain truth about some men's feelings at a certain point in their life. I have not felt like Devon Hendryx in this album in a long time. But I have felt like this. You know, Louis C.K., what is this? The creep parade? I'm sorry. I'm not trying to make any implications about Barrington Devon Hendricks. I assume he hasn't done anything sketchy like Woodsy and Louis C.K. But, you know, I remember he had this joke, and it blew my mind. You know, that we can't have a beautiful thought about a woman that isn't followed by a disgusting thought about the same woman. You're an angel, and I want you to drown in my... I'll let you finish that thing. Like that kind of sentiment, that kind of like depravity and understanding of the depravity and self-hatred of that, like that's the nut, pardon the pun, that's the nut of the album right there. And that's why I think it has to be so loved, because young men are going to be sexually frustrated, are going to not like where they are not going to be sure where they're going, and not have liked where they've been. They're going to have these feelings of loneliness. They're going to have confused masculinity, perhaps even, as this album shows. This album is very bisexual coded, maybe sexually confused as well. All of these things, the sort of young man blues, are all right in this whole album. And it's great. It's just super well made. I can't think of doing it better than this. You better be putting in the comments. Normally I ask you to say AVAA, and I always like those comments. I want you to say thank you to Leon. Those are the comments that I'm going to thank, because this was really helpful for me understanding not only his music, but finding the proper soundtrack to, you know... The kind of man that makes Jordan Peterson cry. You know what I'm saying? Young men, don't have a sense of purpose. Okay, JPEG Mafia is not making his bed. Okay, I know he just got out of the military, so maybe he's making his bed. But spiritually, we got a messy apartment going on in here. All right, so let's actually get into the album. Let's go a little more into details here. Opens up with the track Ballad of a Poor Man, Atmosphere. And by the way, I don't know. I listened to like the original version on Tidal, and then I listened to the remastered, and then I listened to the Bandcamp. All my notes are all over the place. I'll do my best to tell you which version I'm listening to, but I don't know. I'm not sure it makes a big difference. Feel free to argue with me in the comments. Descending guitar and bass. He's such a great musician. He's playing all so interesting. Like, he does this crazy thing where he does beatboxing. Okay, I'm not going to even bring this up. This whole album's on 5, okay? It's like beatboxing, but it's also like breathing and coughing. It's like beatboxing just at the end of the expression. So it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Very interesting usage of beatboxing. Cell phone notification goes off all the way throughout this album. There's these background sounds, like cell phone notifications going off, because this dude is so alone and desperate, and he's trying to contact this person, and he's alone in his room. And he's not in a mansion, my friends. He's in a dinky little apartment, and probably not in a part of town as nice as Kichijoji. Super nice part of Tokyo. You know, singing in the back and swirling sounds. I want to K myself, but I'm too big of a coward. I have no self-control. I have no power. This is an SUICID note as an album. I'm a die a broke man, not a cent in my hand, 'cause life ain't fair. All kids beware. It's a very straightforward, depressing song about wanting to end one's own life. this great little lead guitar notes, just 2 notes, and this "I don't care where I go" weird modified singing. He sings all the way here. There's some, I think, some anime going on here. Lots of anime. Man, there's like a whole constellation. It makes sense that he used a white avatar on here, because so many of these things that he's tapping into are things which are mistakenly thought of as being, largely appreciated by nerdy white kids, as rap music has proven to us over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. There's a huge, giganto overlap in nerd culture between black nerds and white nerds in certain areas. Okay, not so much in some areas and a lot in others. And obviously the things in this album, wrestling and anime, are all there. Next up, Heart Emoji, the first sort of instrumental, very video gamey sounding. And I know he did an album all about the Sega Saturn, the Dreamcast, Sega CD, I don't know, the Atari Lynx. I know he did an album previously, which is often called the first Vaporwave album, based on an old video game system. And the video game-ness are all over here. Right, just all over here. It's the second, and I swear to God, you know what I hear on here? I hear a smoke alarm chirp. If you have a smoke alarm and the batteries go low, it'll chirp. Now, speaking of comedians who talk about masturbation in ways that help me understand myself better, Adam Carolla, who's a very complicated man now because he's a right-wing shill, but he used to be a truly great comedian, and he still is a genius, even if he's turned to the dark side. He used to do a show called Loveline where he and Dr. Drew, people would call him in. And so many people would call him in, and while they were talking about their problems, in the background you'd hear, and they would get obsessed. They would try to time it, and they'd try to talk to them. And it's sort of like that Jordan Peterson thing, make your bed, but it's if 35 seconds is the time in between chirps on a smoke detector. I have lived with a smoke detector for months. Now, me, happy Professor Sky, happy married, currently in the hospital, hopefully holding on to a beautiful, healthy little baby Professor Sky, doesn't let it go. But 24-year-old Sky, working at the PR firm in a very unhealthy relationship from time to time, and not really liking where he is and not knowing where he's going, I might leave that puppy on for months. And people come over, chirp, every 30 seconds. Chirp! It is the greatest and easiest sign. So look up Adam Carolla smoke detector on YouTube. You will find all these calls. I know he's a dick now, but he was a really great communicator. HBK's next song, I think, again, I get all these songs mixed up. Apparently, and thanks to 108 Mics, I'm a Sexy Boy, I'm Not a Sexy Toy, is Shawn Michaels, the wrestler's intro song. So much wrestling going on here. And wrestling's very important. Much like Batman is important for trying to understand the relationship between sort of American power and order and chaos. The same way I think, wrestling is very important for understanding masculinity, because wrestling is watching beautiful, strong, sexy men touch each other for 45 minutes, and it's not gay. So anyways, I was really into wrestling when I was younger, and I remember it's a weird thing, it definitely makes you question masculinity and perhaps even sexuality. He's just such a great multi-instrumentalist here, these swirling sounds. It feels very Ye influenced, very Kanye influenced. He said Kanye is his biggest influence. And this is why, you just have to always be so thankful that Kanye exists. Speaking of fallen titans, because without him, we wouldn't have JPEG Without jpegmafia, we wouldn't. Anyways, next track is called Violent Fighting Comes Again. This sounds like a badly translated thing, because, he's living in Japan when he made this. Automated synth rhythms, weird sounds in the back. It's like a sound collage. And that was one of the things that Fantano said that he didn't like about this album. But, it's rad. It's cool. It's awesome. I mean, little sound collages, you don't... it makes the whole... if the whole thing had all these songs with all this structure, you'd have, a certain feeling to it. But we're in the underwater level. We're just hoping to get that little swordfish so that we can swim a little bit faster. Okay? We're going deeper and deeper. Trying to get the G to complete Kong. Great game. I beat that game when it came out back in, what, 92? And I got the little SNES Classic remake thing, and I beat it with my son. It was fun. Except he was so bad. He's better at video games than I am, but he could not play that game at all. We'd play together, and he'd just jump right onto a bee. It'd be like, and just donkey's got to come in. Sorry, Diddy. Anyways, this song's great. Behold the Pale Horse. Great spoken word. Underneath, some offbeat synth. I think this is sort of like Billie Jean I feel like this is a Funhouse version of Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. Another phone sound here. This is basically the only rapping song. Nice kind of faraway voice. The bloops are more important than the voice. And all these Batman lyrics. One of the previous Devon Hendryx projects was called Joe Chill, which of course Joe Chill is the name of the guy who killed Batman's parents. Stupidest name. Way to go, Bill Finger. You're the greatest genius in the whole world, but Joe Chill? Not the coolest name. I'm watching on the sideline like Robin. I told them, let me get the hostage. They told me Batman runs Gotham, but I'm Rockwood. I don't do options. Either way, the highway and your Datsun. Caught a white dude going down the strip because we don't gunshot. That's for slavery. B-word because we don't believe in your Greek philosophy. So this is that kind of political stuff, and at the heart, I mean, really, it's fascinating because so much of what is at the heart of JPEG Mafia's music, I feel, it's like an appreciation for the fact that probably, white dudes like me are the reason that he can afford to be a full-time artist, but also a lot of the resentment that he feels is the society being run by dudes like me and dudes like me who don't understand his lived experience. So that kind of tension's really there. I mentioned it earlier, but Band of Gypsies by Jimi Hendrix, his live album. So when Jimi Hendrix started, actually, so that's his band, Noel Redding and Mitch Mitchell, in the beginning, Jimi Hendrix Experience. This is the African Americans, Black Americans invented rock and roll, and within 10 years of it being taken by white America, they made it that you couldn't be a black rock and roll star without having 2 white members in your band. That's how bad rock and roll got stolen. That's how bad rock and roll got stolen from Black Americans. You know what I mean? It would be wild. It would be like, I can't even think. I don't even want to say what it would be like because I'll just end up saying something offensive. So Band of Gypsies is with Buddy Miles and Billy Cox, who are 2 amazing black musicians, and his music was moving in a different area, and it was clear that maybe he was starting to get a little uncomfortable. But unfortunately, he was killed by the subpar health system in England. Everybody wants to be black until they get their first ticket. What do you want to be? Posh Spice. Funny lyrics. Then MUGEN, instrumental, funky, ominous sounds, cool percussion, this kind of cool, like funky what on the beats of 2 and 4. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, what, kind of a cool sound. Apparently MUGEN is a game engine, a 2D game engine made by Capcom. And it's also the Japanese word for infinity. So, I don't know. It's interesting. This is some real nerdy stuff. You don't expect, like, someone in the military or a prominent rap star to know this level of nerdery, but that's what's interesting. Porn. Now I said it. I'll be demonetized. For percussion is the next song. There's a lot of moaning and orgasmic sounds on here. It makes sense if you see the whole movie. Develops with the singing and some bass underneath and a lot of feedback, man. Feedback. Unsettling feedback. There's so much feedback. It's so unsettling. You might not even notice how satisfying these flanged synths are in the background and just how well synced they are. How wild these lyrics are. I touch you and I like him. That C word, says it over and over again. I don't know. It stops totally. Then we get to Untitled 1, instrumental, very, very Donkey Kong Country water level. Maybe Dire Docks. I don't know. It's up to you. God Bless My Homegirls. Some more like automated beat with percussion. High soul voice in the back. This low rumbling bass comes in. The whole thing is just so well produced. It's frustrating. Because when I was 24, I made music. I've released some of it on Bandcamp. I made music all by myself, just like him. I had a 4-track, not a computer. So I had a 4-track, and I'd like record all the music myself, and some of it got really kind of experimental, and I was all in my head and all kind of freaked out. But it sounded like ass. This sounds great. This sounds amazing. He's doing all sorts of really interesting stuff. He's going way out there and doing all these great things. This line keeps on repeating. Sex isn't nothing if you can't fit in my ride. I don't quite understand this line, but it's fascinating because it's sort of this like thankfulness and lust, going back to that Louis C.K. thing. Like he's really at war with his debased nature. Bless my friends, Jesus bless my friends. He's very kind of goofing around too in the song, kind of playing in the studio. There's weird robotic sounds and this beat change, and gets super funky at the end with even a whole different new drum line. Then Missing Image File, which is not in the remastered edition, or I don't know, it's a song on this album. It's on some version of it. Builds on that kind of new age funky feeling of the last song. Very violent and sexual, and corn sounds and chugging rhythms. Baby, I hit you with a sawed off. I hit you with a sawed off. What you want, girl? What you want? Very, it makes sense, right? Because there's a lot of like pornography made in Japan that often mixes sort of violence towards women in a way that's perceived of by many people as being not cool. Other people think it's all just fantasy, and that it's just a way of sort of getting this kind of negative, violent feeling out without actually acting on it. I am not going to Andrea Dworkin this question at all. I'm just going to point out that that's a thing, and this album, I think, taps into that from time to time, and definitely the music video does. You will never watch The Weather the same, okay? Listen, if he were tough, if JPEG Mafia was really hardcore, he'd recreate that movie with Al Roker. Willard Scott, you know? If you haven't seen the video, you don't know what I mean. If you have seen the video, don't watch it. Untitled 2, very artsy, weird, faraway sounds, more that underwater feeling. Maybe a guitar will make you hard. Again, the weird sort of gayness of this album, bleeps and boops, leads right into Neon Kitchen 4. Great don't stop flange keyboards, more spoken stuff, just the kitchen, it makes sense, like Neon Kitchen. I saw a couple people who said they don't understand what Neon Kitchen means. I think if you've been to Japan, it makes sense, because like neon's everywhere. So I bet a lot of people have kitchens that just have neon signs just blasting into them, Like Blade Runner makes a hell of a lot more sense when you've been to Japan, because you're like, this whole place is Blade Runner. I'm on neon, stroke that dick like King Kong, turn my neon lights off. That's what I feel safe for. Just unhinged nuttiness. Just slows down. And then we get to Call Me Maybe. Call Me Maybe, the anchor point. This is your reward for the rest of the album, because you've listened to a lot of challenging stuff. You've had a lot of challenging ideas. Here's a pop song that seems like it's sung by like a ghost. I get it. This is ghost pop. Now I get it. 43 minutes in the video, I get it while I'm recording. This is ghost pop. I played this for my daughter. She loved it. She made me listen to Sign Crush's Motorist cover of Last Friday Night. She's like, do you think this is inspired? Maybe, but I don't think Sign Crush's Motorist goes this dark. So this is an anchor point because it's a recognizable song. It was a big hit at the time. It's still a big hit now. And he deconstructs it and puts it underwater, puts it in underwater level. And his voice is so feminine and gorgeous and soulful and beautiful. And transforming this song into vaporwave, and it makes you realize the song is desperate. The song is an incel song. The song is like, oh, I saw you. Oh, your shirt is dripping. Oh, here. I don't do this normally, but would you call me maybe? If you swap the genders on Call Me Maybe, it's not cool. Right? It's not cool. And then a little sound of the phone alert as well. And he whistles the melody, and it's great play. And then in the background, we have a whole Undertaker match in wrestling. And that's the whole heart of the project. You know, that it's like he's trying to figure out what a man is. And so he's watching wrestling, and he's like desperate and alone. And this weird image of masculinity. And then he's singing this like pop song for girls in a falsetto voice and this droning sound. And everything's just all mixed up. It's the kind of album where it doesn't make sense at all unless it makes sense. And then when it makes sense, the whole thing, it feels like not a single hair is out of place. Once it snaps into, once you can access, now listen, I'm not in that headspace right now, but I can, like most human beings, you know, like, you know how you can like set up your computer to go in the Wayback Machine or whatever, and like the Wayback Machine on the internet, and you can see what a website looked like. You know, this is what Amazon looked like in 2002. You can access the way your brain felt at earlier times in life. I can scan back and remember 2001, and I can remember how I felt when I was 24. And this album's right there. This is right there. It's great. It makes perfect sense to me when I was 24. Now that I'm 46, not as much. Next track is called Pussy 3. I haven't heard Pussy 1 or Pussy 2, but I assume it doesn't really matter. Kind of automated clicking sounds, just someone saying Pussy number 3. Is this a Beatles reference? I think it's a Beatles reference to Revolution number 9. This words repeated to just absurdity. Bubblegum Crisis, I guess that's another anime funky beat. It's weird because I watch movies on mute while I listen to music, which works very well for this album. And Robert Townsend's freaking masterpiece, Hollywood Shuffle, co-written by Keenan Ivory Wayans, like secretly like one of the most important movies maybe of the 80s, because it just announced so much that was coming. I happened to be watching a scene where this woman was demanding that someone act more like Eddie Murphy. I need a Murphectomy. Be more Murphonic. And this woman is just chewing this gum very loudly. Anyways, and this is a song about wanting a woman to stay with him after sex. He's so gentle. He's so sweet. He's so kind and loving, while at the same time making this weird porno video with that poor weather lady. You know, that's the whole thing. That's the multitude. That's the complexity that Louis C.K. talks about, and that a lot of us have felt at some point in our life. And the important thing is that we don't act on those thoughts, that we understand that that's our sort of lizard self. And that's maybe the danger of the internet, is that like we connect to it, and then we have like 5,000 other people who are like, yes, I also want to do that. And then you go, oh, well, this is good. Next track's called Liara. I guess it's another anime thing. God, so much anime. Descending, swirly keyboard notes. Just great, like, thin drums. Very thin drums. So much of this album is thin. It's wafy. It's blurred. And this is a song about wanting to bang a dude who has a girlfriend when you already have a girlfriend. Like, seriously. Like, when was this album? 2000? Why is my ear still red? Did I get sunburned on one ear? This is gonna bug me. And this album is just so far ahead of itself. 2013. Yeah. I guess that's why people are so excited about JPEG Mafia. The next song is called Oh Superman. This is my only disappointment in the album. Listen, when I saw Call Me Maybe, I thought, well, it's not going to be a cover of Call Me Maybe. And then it was, and I was delightfully surprised. And then you bring up Oh Superman, the Laurie Anderson song off Big Science. Oh Superman, oh Judge, oh, Mom and Dad, Hello, would you like smoking or non-smoking? Okay, I could keep going. If you don't know Oh Superman by Laurie Anderson, you are ignorant. Now that's okay, because ignorance just means you don't know something. There's nothing actually bad about being ignorant. Again, it's when you act on your ignorance. That's why the slogan of my channel is ignorance is profound, okay? Now, disabuse yourself. Become acquainted with this, 1981? When was the song? Came out 82, way ahead of its time. Super bizarre, abstract song that just totally totally avant-garde 80s song, just absolutely at the edge of legibility. So obviously he's making a call to this, but I was a little disappointed. I was a little disappointed because, I thought it might be a cover, but it wasn't. While I'm watching Hollywood Shuffle, at this exact point, someone says, I'm going to be the first black Superman. Weird. Backwards sound, this funky beat comes in eventually, just super underwater. Untitled 3 more female orgasmic voices, the sound of a truck backing up, that beep. So much incidental sound in here, speaking. What are you going to do when I come for you? That's another wrestling line. What you going to do when Hulkamania comes running down on you? I don't know what it is. I don't know. Ever since Hulk Hogan was elected to Congress, I can't take him seriously. And then here's where it says the Ghost Pop EP is over, unless you're me and you just keep going and you find more and more songs, such as ODB. Now this makes sense because ODB sort of like incarnates a lot of that kind of wild id-related just insanity. And it's apparently it feels like it's a live show and swirls up, and he's just like constantly quoting, ooh baby I like it raw and shimmy shimmy ya, and he sings very nice and sort of like there's kind of a power trip with ODB, just that you can just be as wild as you want, as crazy as you want, but if you're talented enough, people will give you that space, and so you can F on the couch and F on the counter and all that. There's like there's like the Andrew Tate power fantasy, which like doesn't speak to me at all. But like the John Belushi, old dirty bastard, just like totally out there, insane, pre-sobriety Danny Brown, like makes sense. And a little saxophone in here too, a cool little groove at the end. Next track is called Piano Baby. What's funny is when I listened to Call Me Maybe, my daughter said, this is a wild sample. I said, well, no, dear, it's not a sample, it's a cover. She's like, well, I know it's a cover, but that's sampling the voice. And I'm like, no, that's actually JPEG Mafia singing. And she's like, it is? And I'm like, I think so. This is actually sampling Call Me Maybe. So, it's funny. It's thematically connected, but also some beautiful real piano being played here. This beat, I think more than any other, announces the future style of JPEG Mafia. And the final track is Sakura, which I think means cherry blossoms in Japanese. Gentle descending synth, sweet singing. The percussion is like in a video game when you jump on enemies' heads. And more of that fire alarm chirp, chirp. The sign of turpitude. That's my vocab word for you, turpitude. Look it up. It's a good word. And what I love is at the very end, he said, I made this album because I don't have a future and I'm genuinely in love with what I'm doing. And it really feels that way. Pizzicato 5 is another sort of random bonus track, a little rap song, kind of confessional and weird. Talks about his relationship to money and why he uses drugs. This really feels like he's already in JPEG Mafia town. This is just his last little stop in Devon Hendricksville. So there you go. There's my review. Thank you, Leon. Did you learn something from what I'm saying? Or maybe you just like thinking about this album, which would make sense. Because, now that this album has been introduced to me, I feel like it's in my lexicon. I feel like a lot of things make a lot more sense. And I feel like I understand young men a little bit better. All right, well, I'm going to go... Ironically, while you're watching this, I'm in the hospital while my baby's being born. But right now, after recording this, I'm going to go to the hospital and see if I don't have, ear herpes or something. Is that a thing? It's still red. Fortunately, my wife's, basically a doctor. She'll be able to help me out. All right. Well, then, until next time, there's the camera.